So hello and welcome back. Thanks very much for joining us for this episode of Wander into Wellbeing, Self-Care Basic Habits. We're really pleased to be part of Team Bath's Stay In Workout Activity Timetable. My name is Aurea Fellows. I'm an occupational psychologist and nutritional therapist, and I'm going to be joined as well by Keith Goddard, my colleague, who is also an occupational psychologist and a sport and exercise psychologist to boot. Together we are Reason to Be, and our aim is to help people to thrive and to dare to dream in whatever situation they find themselves. The episode today is going to be focused on emotional well-being, and we're going to take a bit of a deeper dive into breathing and how that can really help us in terms of our well-being from an emotional perspective. So the reason that we wanted to spend a bit of time focused on breathing is because it is one thing that we have in our control when it comes to our emotional well-being, and is a real psychological core for us, in that something that we can come back to when we are perhaps feeling very anxious or there's a lot of uncertainty, and we can up our level of perceived control, and we can actually help our emotional well-being at those times. Because taking control of our breathing actually interrupts our sort of physiological response to anxiety or to stress, and actually helps to initiate the response, which would be a normal, more of a relaxation phase for the body. And we can use our breathing to help us emotionally in a number of ways. So we can use it if we need to really relax and to sort of chill out. We can use it when we need to distract ourselves from a racing mind or a particularly unhelpful emotion that we're experiencing. And we can also use it to be mindful, to help us to focus and concentrate in the present moment when we need to. And when we breathe, one of the key things that we need to think about is engaging our diaphragm. That's the kind of dome-shaped muscle that we have that sits between the chest and the abdominal cavity. And when we use it, it means that our breathing is a lot more efficient. So it's deeper and it's slower, as compared to when we breathe from the chest, just using our rib cage, when our breathing therefore tends to be shallower and quicker and less helpful when it comes to reducing our level of emotion. So I'm going to hand over to Keith now, who's going to do a demo of what it looks like to engage our diaphragm and breathe in that way.
Hi everyone. So I'm going to, as Aurea said, I'm going to demonstrate diaphragmatic breathing or belly breathing. As Aurea said, our diaphragm is a muscle that goes under our rib cage and supports our lungs. The diaphragm is probably the most important muscle in our breathing. So what I'm going to do is just spend a couple of minutes demonstrating that and hopefully give you a bit of practice. One thing to say about this exercise, folks, is just a little bit of cautionary note that if you've got any breathing difficulties or any conditions that would affect your breathing, please be cautious and don't do the exercise and seek medical help. You can do diaphragmatic breathing or belly breathing anywhere. You can do it standing up as I am, you can do it sitting down, you can do it lying down. For this exercise, I'm going to do it standing up, but what I would suggest is just get yourself into a comfortable place. And what I mean by comfortable is if you're sitting down, ideally on a high back chair with your back into the back of the chair, feet firmly on the floor, and initially just get yourself comfortable. Standing up is feet hip width apart, flat on the floor, and just get yourself into a nice balanced position. So that's what I would mean by a comfortable position. All I'm going to do is explain the exercise, and you can follow it if you want, or you can obviously play the video back to practice. So what I'd like you to do initially is one hand on your chest and one hand on your belly. And what I'd like you to do is to just take 3 to 4 really deep breaths. You can close your eyes for this exercise, so 3 or 4 deep breaths. If you bring yourself back into the room. So if you were watching the video, what you noticed was my shoulders were going up more and my chest hand was moving more. So what we're going to do is just do another 3 to 4 breaths, deep breaths. But what we're going to try and do this time is breathe through our diaphragm, our belly. And what you're in effect trying to do is to keep your chest hand still and get your belly to push out your belly hand. Okay, so let's try that again. So again, 3 to 4 deep belly breaths, trying to push your belly hand out. Okay, if you gently bring yourselves back into the room. So hopefully you're feeling that. A lot of people find this quite difficult and can't get the hand to move. And that's just practice, really, because it is quite an unusual thing if you're not used to this. Anybody that's a dancer, does Pilates or does yoga will probably find this quite easy. Interesting enough, a lot of people that do a lot of exercise or athletes sometimes find it more difficult. But lots of practice to try and move that hand out. And it will feel quite uncomfortable initially through the diaphragm, because what you're trying to do is to pull that muscle down. So what we're going to do now is just practice a little bit more. And we're going to do 6 deep breaths this time. And again, trying to close your eyes if you can and imagine, picture that hand being pushed out. What I would suggest, if you're comfortable doing, is breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth. But you can do it any way you want, but that's the most effective way. So let's just try 6 big belly breaths, nice and slow and relaxed. And okay, bring yourselves back into the room. One of the things to be aware of is if you're standing up is you may feel a little bit lightheaded, particularly if you start going to 10 or 12 breaths. So just be cautious about that and make sure you sit down. As I said, you can do this sitting down, laying down, standing up. You can do it while you're walking as well. What's important is to keep focusing on that hand coming out and to practice. And you will occasionally get your chest hand to come out as well. But the key thing is imagine that as a football you're trying to inflate, and it will feel a little bit more comfortable. Top tip is actually, if you want to deepen your breathing, particularly if you're sitting down or laying down, is definitely close your eyes and to just roll your eyes backwards. And that cuts the light out from your eyelids, which actually deepens the experience. So that's our belly breathing. Generally, I say try to practice at least 6 breaths at a time, trying to get up to 12, and keep on doing it. Your diaphragm will get used to it and will become a lot easier. But as I said, some people do struggle or feels quite uncomfortable. What I'm going to do is hand over to Aurea now, who's going to show us some different types, explain a number of different types of breathing.
Thanks very much, Keith. So when it comes to belly breathing or diaphragmatic breathing, there's no kind of right or wrong really in terms of how to do it. It depends on what works best for you, and there are a number of different ways that you can make it work. Some people like to also have music playing as a way to help them to relax and to focus on their breath. For other people, it might be looking at an image, or if they're closing their eyes, actually visualizing somewhere that's calm and that they found a very relaxed place to be in the past. So it's about having different ideas and just playing around with what might work best for you. And you can either do it very regularly, sort of 1 or 2 minutes every hour, or you might want to put aside a bigger chunk of time, more like 5 to 10 minutes, and just do that maybe 3 or 4 times through the day. And in terms of sort of strategies, when it comes to using this type of breathing, there's a number of different ways that you can try it out depending on what you're looking for. So what's called 7 to 11 breathing is really helpful if you want to relax deeply. And effectively what this is breathing in for the count of 7 I'm breathing out for the count of 11. So that's not necessarily 7 seconds or 11 seconds, but just to a slow count up to those numbers. And so that you are controlling and matching your breath with the count. If that's a bit too long to start with, if you're new to this, then potentially a ratio of 5 to 8 might be a good place to start instead. The other thing that you could use is what's called squared or 4x4 breathing. And this is really helpful if you want to recharge or concentrate and really focus your mind. And here the technique is breathing in for 4, holding it for 4, breathing out for 4, and then holding that for 4, and keep repeating. And some people find it helpful to look at something that's actually square at the time and sort of imagine they're going around the 4 sides of the square as they do it. And the other thing is, if you're just in a situation where you're finding yourself feeling very stressed, feeling quite anxious, is just to go and engage with 3 to 6, just really nice big belly breaths that can really just help to reduce the emotion at that particular point. But if this is a different style of breathing for you, if this is something that doesn't feel like you've engaged in it with before, it can feel a bit difficult, and it can, when you start out, it can really feel quite unusual.
Thanks, Aurea. So, as Aurea said, a little bit of practice will make it feel more comfortable. The reality is breathing is a physical skill. And for those people that do a lot of exercise or play sport, we know skills take practice to acquire. So practice, 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 it makes perfect, I guess, in this case. And as Aurea said, it can feel a little bit uncomfortable. My advice generally when you practice is practice in loads of different places and in loads of different ways, so your body gets used to breathing in different environments. So sitting down, laying down, standing up, walking, and the more your brain will recognize that and get comfortable with it. And again, Aurea said about 7 to 11 squared breathing and 3 to 6 belly breaths. Again, practice those in different contexts as well. One thing to think about as well is practicing your breathing skill, your belly breathing skill or diaphragmatic breathing skill when you're moving around. So at home at the moment, I'm a little bit constrained with where you are, but you play around with belly breathing. So practice every time you walk through a door, take 3 belly breaths. And you can pause doing that, or just as you transit through, and take three belly breaths. If you're out on your 1 day, your hour's exercise, half an hour's exercise, walking the dog, etc., have a bit of a game with yourself. So every time you see a cyclist, pause, take 3 to 6 belly breaths. Every time you see a car or a red car, pause. So I guess what you're trying to do is just actually not just take formal breathing breaks to practice your breathing, but getting your body into the practice of using diaphragmatic or belly breathing on the move when you're actually moving around. And that will make it way more effective if you've got to use your 3 to 6 belly breaths when you're stressed and anxious. Your brain will recognize you and you're asking you to do that. I think the other thing as well, be creative. So as Aurea said at the front end of this, you can use diaphragmatic belly breathing for relaxing, distracting yourself and being mindful. So one of the things is just be creative of where you do that. So for those people that have worked with me over the years, they always laugh. I always say practice in the toilet, because a couple of reasons for that. One, there's a bit of privacy and quiet. Hopefully you can lock the door and just say 5 minutes, so you can practice that way. But the one thing that we generally do during the day is go to the loo. So actually you can build your breathing into a regular routine around going to the toilet, whether that be work, home, etc. So have a bit of fun with it, be creative. I think the other part that I would suggest as well is practice your breathing around your bedtime routine. And generally before we go to bed, or you can do this in bed when you're getting ready for sleep, is just spend a little bit of time practicing your diaphragmatic or belly breathing. Generally, I would say 1 to 3 minutes gets your arousal level down to a nice, relaxed, comfortable place. But equally, you can get ready for bed, so you can do it early evening. So spend just 5 minutes early evening while you sat watching the TV. just practicing your diaphragmatic breathing. The key thing is making sure your body's in a position where it will work effectively. So sitting comfortably, as I've explained earlier, standing comfortably, lying down. You can do it part of your stretching routine if you're someone that stretches. I'd also suggest just in the morning as well. So activating your system. So already talked about squared breathing or 4x4 or box breathing as it's known. So that's really useful in the morning to just activate and to recharge your system, or at lunchtime or once a day. So try and pepper your day through different mechanisms of breathing. For longer breathing sessions, what I'd suggest is using an app or music, as Aurea said. So the app will guide you through the act of breathing. So apps such as Calm, Headspace, Smiling Minds, etc., are all really useful. And they're generally mindfulness apps. Calm's a little bit more got more utility around it. The iWatch has got a really good breathing app that will remind you to breathe. So one of the things to think about is regularizing your breathing and getting practiced at it, but also using it to recharge. And we talked a lot about 45, 15 minutes. So build 1 minute of breathing into every hour as part of your 15 minutes recharge schedule, which is a really useful way to practice, but also to make it work for you. So we've covered quite a lot there in a short period of time. We've covered a lot of top tips around breathing. Breathing is part of our emotional well-being, so it's fundamental to our emotional well-being. So hopefully there's some things there that you can practice, some things that you'll be familiar with, some things that you won't. So remember, emotional and breathing is one aspect of well-being, and well-being is not just one thing. Emotional well-being is one aspect of a wider aspect of our well-being. And well-being fundamentally is a symbiotic system. So don't forget to recharge every hour. Don't forget to take care of yourself. And from us for now, it's goodbye.